For copyright reasons, I'm not going to be singing What's Going On. Hello, everyone. Bront, CatHerder here. We're having some fun talking Raid Shadow Legends, and Raid dropped an interesting bombshell for us today. They have a wonderful collab with He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. Now, if those of you guys who are not aware, I'm an older gentleman, and I grew up in the 80s where these cartoons were all the rage. They were so awesome. They were so terrible at the same time. We get a free champion, and we actually have a new champion path. So first of all, we have Skeletor. Skeletor is actually going to be a free champion. Now, this is pretty awesome. You get him after 7 days, and within a couple of weeks, you can actually get a 5-star soul for him. 5-star souls are super powerful. You get extra crit damage, you get extra resistance, you get extra accuracy, and the 5-star is really when the blessings start to kick in, and they're that much closer to a 6-star, and it's free. So pretty awesome. You also get this wonderful Skeletor avatar. That's kind of cool. You get a Primal Shard in here too. So this definitely looks like something that you guys should be following up on and getting that 5-star soul, since for the most part, it's going to involve logging in and playing the game. It should not be too difficult. Now, this is a limited time thing. You have to start this by December 28th. So you got about a month and a half, I'll say 35, 40 days to get this done. So you want to start logging in as soon as possible on any accounts you want to pick up Skeletor, because Skeletor is kind of cool. What does he do? Well, we'll go into his kit in just a minute. So the other thing that they have here is they do have this He-Man's champion path. So I am going to dive into that in just a minute. Let's go take a look at Skeletor. All right, so Skeletor here is a Knight's Rev, which is kind of cool. It actually makes a lot of sense given his, in theory, background. I guess the lore is pretty hilarious, and if you have not had a chance to do it, Raid actually has a fun commercial out there using the old 80s He-Man animations, and it's actually pretty funny because Raid commercials are honestly pretty cool. So what does Skeletor do? Well, first of all, he's got a 60% accuracy aura in all battles, so that will be absolutely key for a lot of early game accounts. So he will be great on your account to lead your team. He's got the A1 here, attacks one enemy 2 times. Each hit has a 75% chance of increasing the duration of a random debuff on the target by 1 turn, bookable to 100. This is a little more reliable than Loki, but Loki does AoE. He also is a 2-hitter, so this is a 2 different random duration debuffs. So that's not too bad. Damage based on a HP, because he is a support champion. I don't know if he does a lot of damage. I don't think he does. I didn't look up his multipliers. He doesn't strike me as a damage dealing champion, and we'll get into why later on in this kit. His A2 here, bookable to a 3-turn cooldown, 75% chance, bookable to 100% chance of placing petrification. He is now the only champion that can target place petrification. Mithrala can do it as a reaction to somebody attacking when they have Hex. Arbias, the mythical from the Sylvan Watchers, can reactively place it if people attack her if she has Revive on Death. This is actually kind of cool. So he's a single target shutdown champion. If it's a boss, he gets decreased attack and decreased speed. That's a little mixed just because decreased speed can be blocked by a lot of different bosses, but decreased attack can be helpful. Early on, decreased attack is going to be great. That's going to help you in Clan Boss. He's going to be an HP-based champion as far as damage is concerned, so you'll be able to make him tanky anyway. Base stats over there seems pretty decent. He's got some decent speed, decent overall stats, so not too bad. Whenever a petrification debuff is removed or expires on an enemy, has a 50% chance to place a decreased speed buff or debuff on an enemy for 1 turn. So slows people down when they come out of petrification. Again, very powerful. Could be a fun combination with Mithrala in a couple of situations. Overall, this is a pretty good ability. Will be very useful early on in Arena. Probably not going to be a very endgame viable champion. But there's other things too. And of course, there's other fun stuff with petrification, which is why I think he's actually pretty cool. So his A3, 5-turn, bookable to 3, 50% increased accuracy, also has a 75% chance, bookable to 100, to steal block debuff buffs. and one other random buff from each enemy. So he is a buff stripper that steals block debuffs and one other buff. The block debuffs is a very interesting. With increased accuracy and removing block debuffs, he becomes very viable on bomb team. On top of that, he does a decreased turn meter, which would also be helpful for bomb teams. And if they're Tolarian League, it becomes a 30% turn meter instead. So Tolarian League is your Barbarians, your Sacred Order, those champions, the very top 4 factions. So this is very, very good for a bomb champion. That's actually where this petrification can become very good for bomb champions as well, because a bomb champion does more damage versus petrification and stone skin. So petrifying somebody is actually a great way to make sure that they die to bombs. Finally, he's got a passive. Whenever this champion attempts to place a debuff, steal a buff, increase the enemy turn meter, or increase the duration of a debuff on an enemy, increases this champion's accuracy by 20 for each buff on that enemy. Interestingly enough, that doesn't seem to have a cap. So his accuracy just continues to rise and rise and rise. So if he stops landing stuff, eventually he will start landing things, which is kind of interesting. Whenever this champion is hit, has a 40% chance of placing a 50% decreased resistance debuff on the attacker for 1 turn. This chance increases to 75% chance from the Tolarian League. Now, he can't book this, unfortunately, but 40% chance for decreased resistance for free, not too bad. Overall, seems like a very interesting kit. I think he's fairly niche for support for bomb champions as far as the late game is concerned, but honestly, he could be a very good bomb champion support, because removing specifically those 2 buffs can be very good, giving him additional accuracy every time he does any of these things. And since he does a lot of these things, his accuracy is going to skyrocket pretty quickly. So he could be very interesting. You can build him reasonably fast because of his base stats. You can build him reasonably tanky. It'll be kind of interesting. I think he will be a fun champion for a lot of progression. Let's go take a look at He-Man, though. Now we have He-Man here. He is a Sacred Order champion. He's got this really cool animation where he calls on the power of Grayskull. I think he looks absolutely amazing. Honestly, both champions look amazing, but they did a really good job of making him raid focused while still being very true to the character. So I think that this overall is absolutely amazing. He's honestly one of the better looking champs I've seen in a while, so that's really cool. But I like the He-Man design, even if it is kind of basic. They've pumped it up just a little bit, but still made him look really, really good. So what does He-Man do? Well, he is an arena-focused nuker. He's got an ally speed aura in arena by 28%. Will be very helpful for a lot of people, especially if Monkey King becomes a not free champion at some point in time, because this is a Monkey King or an Armand's level speed aura. So very good. These are showing up in arena a lot more, but having it on your nuker gives you some additional flexibility when you're trying to build a speed team, because you no longer have to worry about somebody banning your speed lead and you suddenly can't even get some turn meter in because you don't have any kind of speed lead. So I think he'll be very viable to a lot of early game accounts for this. Got his A1 here, hits one enemy, places an extra attack on enemies from the Corrupted, which is of course the Knights Rev, the Demon Spawn, and those factions, the ones that Skeletor's in. You know, surprise, surprise, Skeletor and He-Man counter each other. Also fills this champion's turn meter by 10% and fills him by an additional 2% for each buff on this champion. And you are going to want to buff this champion. He is actually pretty cool. Damage based on attack and HP. Now the attack is more prevalent, but his HP multipliers are actually fairly solid. It's pretty big for the fact that you're also going to get attack out of him. He's got some decent HP for a nuking champion. He's got a decent amount of attack, so he should be able to scale up fairly well. And since he scales on the HP, you can build him a little on the tankier side if you want to. It also means he might be really good in Stone Skin, because the Stone Skin shield is based off of your max HP. So let's go take a look. A2 here. Attacks one enemy. Before attacking, it places a increase attack buff on this champion for 2 turns. So that's a buff he gets placed on himself. Very good. Ignores Stone Skin buffs. That's great. If this attack kills an enemy, fills the turn meter of all allies by 30%. That's huge. That's a really good ability. This does have to nuke to be the Ignore Stone Skin, but I've actually seen some tests run on him, and I've seen the multipliers. This absolutely can nuke, and you'll see other things that can help him make sure that this nukes further on in his kit as well. So this actually hits fairly hard. I don't think he's going to become necessarily an ultimate meta champion, but we'll take a look and see the rest of his kit. His A3 here attacks all enemies, 4-turn cooldown, bookable to 3. Damage inflicted by the skill is increased by 10% for each buff placed on this champion before this skill is used. Stacks up to 500%. Resets after this skill is used. Now, for long-term fighting, for Hydra, for example, the fact that this resets is very unfortunate. I think if this didn't reset, that would be kind of gross. That said, 500% additional damage is not going to fly. So it wouldn't be 500% if that didn't reset. But it's not that hard to get 50, 70, 100% on this just in between 3 turns while this is on cooldown as well. He does use this skill as his secondary skill. So he tends to do his A2 before he does his A3 if you just leave him alone. But that means he's going to buff himself, at least with his A2. And let's go take a look at his passive, because that plays off of this pretty well. Increase this champion's attack and HP by 5% for each buff placed on this champion. Stacks up to 50%. So he's slowly but surely grabbing additional attack and additional HP for each buff placed on this champion, period. Which that will then stack with that additional damage he's going to do as well. So eventually he gets 10 buffs on him. His permanent attack and HP are going to be scaled up by 5% each. That's going to increase his damage pretty significantly. He also places a 25% strengthen buff on himself for 2 turns at the start of each round. Now that's a round, so it's not every turn, it's a round. But he still gets the strengthen buffs to starting off, which is pretty good. Also places a 20% strengthen on this champion for 2 turns when any of his HP drops below 50% after this champion's attack. So if he knocks somebody down and at least makes them below 50%, which by the way, dead is below 50%. I didn't know if you knew that math, just making sure you guys knew. He will get that strengthen buff as well. He is also immune to petrification. That means that he could be a good counter for a Mithrala, for example. That means that he's obviously a good counter for a Skeletor, which, makes some sense. So he is self-buffing himself. He's got 2 buffs in his kit. One is guaranteed. The other one's guaranteed when he does his A2. And then he could get the strengthen if he's doing some damage, which is a damage dealer, is something he should be doing as well. He's going to slowly ramp his damage up over time. And if you buff him continuously, which this game is all about buffing your champions, he's going to absolutely nuke with this ability. I've seen the multipliers. The multipliers look pretty good. Hellhades.com, you can certainly check that out. He's got the multipliers listed there. Listed him as a godlike damage dealer on all 3 of these stats. I still don't think he's going to replace a Georgid, for example, because Georgid ignores so much defense. It ignores so many other things. He only ignores Stone Skin on this one. He's a one-trick pony with the ignore Stone Skin, but he does hit hard enough that he should be able to kill a lot of Stone Skin champions. Not necessarily the tankiest, but some of the tankier champions he should be able to kill with the Stone Skin, which means that he can certainly crack through maybe a UDK, maybe not. It's going to be kind of hit or miss if he actually can do that much damage. But he'll get an increased attack on himself first. There's a bit of caveat with getting this champion. So here we go. We have the champion pass here, and this is very similar to the Xena champion pass. So you can get the avatar at level 13, and you can get a ham at level 25, which is great. If you want to get the actual champion, you need to spend money. So to get the elite pass, it's going to be $40. It's going to be $60 if you want to just buy him and get him outright. Now, you also get some other interesting stuff as well. You get some 6-star gear. So it looks like you can get some rings here and amulets and banners. I don't know if these are predetermined what they are or they're just random. You can also get some mythical instinct gear. Instinct gear would actually be fairly good on him because it does ignore defense. It's the type of stat you would want to get on a He-Man. And overall, you get a bunch of 6-star glyphs down here as well. Is this great value? No, for the most part, you're paying for a champion. But for $40 to get a guaranteed legendary champion that is of a type of champion that you know what he is ahead of time, so getting a specific legendary champion is not a bad deal, at least as far as raid terms are concerned. I'm not going to tell you to spend money to get this. I'm not going to tell you shouldn't. I do, however, think this is fairly a decent value for a good champion. This is not, however, going to be an endgame meta setter champion, so you're not going to find him in Platinum Arena too often. You're not going to find him in Live Arena Gold 4, but for progression, if you're a new account and you just kind of give yourself a boost, well, he certainly could be your arena nuker for quite a while because he's got a really good kit. He actually can do enough damage to do some wave clear, especially if you can boost him up regularly. He hits very hard, a lot harder than I thought he was going to in some of the damage I've seen. Now, I've not had a chance to actually test him in person, so maybe it was the gear on some of the stuff I've seen, but he does a ton of damage. I think he's a pretty good champ. And honestly, I'm leaning towards picking him up, honestly, mostly because I love He-Man. I was, big thing of mine when I was a kid. I think it's overall a fairly good value if you're looking for a champion and if you're looking for a nuker, especially if you think that he could be better than the nukers you currently have on your account, which for a lot of newer players is definitely the case. Hopefully this breakdown has been helpful for you. Hopefully you get a chance to get yourself a Skeletor. If you want to check me out on Twitch, I will be streaming this Tuesday. This Thursday is Thanksgiving, so happy Thanksgiving to all you American folks that celebrate Thanksgiving. And I will not be streaming Thursday because I'm in the US. I should be doing something on Friday. I may have a special event on Friday. I'll announce it in my channel here, so you should be able to see that on my community page, as well as you can check that out in Discord. Check all that stuff out below. You want some fun Christmas merch? I've got my store here. You see, I've got my Bront CatHerder t-shirt here. I love these things. These are awesome. They're super comfortable, and this has lasted quite a while, so I'm really, really happy with the quality on that. You can check out the merch down there as well. So guys, if you get a chance, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, smash it. I definitely appreciate it. Feel free to leave a comment down below on if you were watching some of these old He-Man cartoons or maybe some of the newer He-Man cartoons. I know they brought him back several times. What's your connection to He-Man? Are you a big fan of this? Do you think this is kind of a cool collab? Let me know. I'd love to hear from you guys. And until the next video, I'm Bront CatHerder.